call a planning commission meeting for July 26th to order at 7:01. For the Pledge of Allegiance, I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Deborah Eddy.
I am here. Yay.
Mark Bouchard. Here. Christopher Daggy.
Present.
Chris Hiltunen.
Here.
Christine Holcomb.
Here.
Tom Kozel.
Absent excused.
Robert Musling here. And Wayne Torno.
Here.
And Kathy Schweikart.
Here. Thank you very much. Item number 4 is approval amendments to the agenda.
A motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Deborah Addy.
Yes.
Mark Bouchard.
Yes.
Christopher Daggy.
Yes.
Chris Hiltunen.
Yes.
Christine Holcomb.
Yes.
Tom Kozel is absent. Robert Musling, yes. Wayne Torno.
Yes.
And Kathy Schweikart.
Yes. Item number 5, approval of minutes from June 28th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting of June 28, 2023 as submitted.
Support.
We have a motion to support. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Deborah Addy.
I'm going to pass.
Mark Bouchard.
Yes.
Christopher Daggy.
Yes.
Chris Hiltunen.
Yes.
Christine Holcomb.
Yes.
Tom Kozel is absent. Robert Musling, yes. Wayne Torno.
Yes.
And Kathy Schweikart.
Yes, thank you. Under new business, item number 6 is a public hearing. Before we conduct the public hearing, I would ask Chris, since you're so good at reading the bullet points, would you please do so for us?
Yep, the rules for public comment and public hearing comments. Number 1, all comments must be made through the chairperson. Comments directed to the applicant from the audience are prohibited. 2, individuals wishing to speak have time limits, 3 minutes for each member of the general public and 6 minutes for a spokesperson of a larger group. Number 3, anyone wishing to speak is asked to sign a sign-in sheet provided. However, anyone wishing to speak will be given the opportunity. Number 4, each individual will be allowed to speak once. It will be the chairperson's decision as to whether rebuttal comments will be allowed. 5, citizens may appoint a spokesperson to represent those who agree on a point of view. 6, public comments on specific public hearing requests should be made during a public hearing for that item.
Thank you, Chris. With that, I will open the public hearing for 6123 High Road, and it's at 7:04. Steve? Go ahead, Steve.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tonight you have a request in front of you for a type 2 home occupation. The property is zoned rural suburban. It's on 6123 High Road. It's about 12 acres, a little over 12 acres. They're asking to have a craft beer brewery home occupation. It's currently developed with a single-family home and an attached accessory garage, and then a detached pole barn. The applicant's requesting to utilize the pole barn to brew craft beer. There are a number of conditions for all home occupations. No outdoor storage shall take place. Only the full-time residents can operate this facility. No structural modifications that are inconsistent with the appearance of a single-family neighborhood. No equipment, materials, or processes which are incompatible with the principal use of the dwellings are allowed. No use associated which creates any unusual noise, dust, that kind of thing is allowed. And the activity shall be in full compliance with state and local regulations, such as Health Department or Bureau of Tobacco and Firearms or the state Michigan Licensing Board, Liquor Licensing Board. Now, they're asking for a type 2 occupation, which is a little bit more, it allows a little bit of a larger area to construct or utilize the space for a brewery. But there's a requirement that says that they still need to utilize their attached garage or their home for this occupation. The Curas did go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and received a waiver to allow this in their attached or detached pole barn. There's a number of other conditions that, again, similar. You have to limit visitations, you can't have parties, large parties and that. You can't do repair of vehicles on the premises. Now, both myself and Gary have visited the site. And speaking for me, I think this site is well-suited for this type of operation. I believe in talking to Mr. Gura that he intends to comply with each and every one of these requirements, so I'm recommending approval.
Thank you, Steve, appreciate it. I do see Gary's here from the building department. Is there anything you'd like to add? And actually, I'm going to ask you to come to the podium because I was informed that we need to do that for future recordings. How's that?
Right. Yes, they did get special approval from ZBA to have it in a detached garage. It's still governed by type 2. So, this can't be a full-blown, when you think of brewery, you think about tasting and all that sort of thing that could possibly go on, selling to the public or anything like that from this location, and that's not allowed. So that's something that we'll look over and make sure none of that happens. This is a startup business, and I'm sure he'll tell you all about it. But it's a startup business that he hopes people catch on to it and buy his brewery or his beer from establishments in the area. And hopefully it grows to a point where then he can move this operation to a more suitable location.
Thank you, Gary, appreciate that. With that, if the applicants would like to come forward and have anything to say, please come to the podium, state your name.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Gura. I live at 6123 High Road. Thank you for your time this evening to review our proposal. With me is my wife, Gigi, of 40 years, and we're very excited about this opportunity. We do have some updates to the presentation pack, so if I may approach, we have some updated copies here I'd like to share. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. Not much has changed. It's just the layout has changed as we worked with our equipment supplier.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So, as Gary and Steve had mentioned, we sought zoning variance approval from Clay Township in May of 2023 this year and received approval to locate the type 2 occupation in the pole barn. And we'll spend some time giving you some background on that if you like. And so today we're seeking commission approval for authorization to proceed with the type 2 home occupation, right? In this presentation, for context, we're giving you a little bit on the market insight, the strategy and approach that we're taking, some of the challenges that we see going into it. And if you like, I can take you through that, or we can move through that right to the Q&A and the issues that Steve discussed.
Only up to you how you want to approach it.
Let me give you a little context on this. I think it'll help. So starting with the industry of craft beer. Back in 2017, there was a national study that looked at the emergence and where craft beer was going. And at that point in time, they saw that it was growing faster than the base market. So they saw that annual growth was going to be 11% a year, and that for the percentage of the industry in terms of the overall beer industry was 23% and growing. And there were trends based on age group, based on flavor preferences. So today you see things like Northeast IPA or City Juice, so you see a lot of proliferation beyond the base lagers that exist. And so that market has developed, and so the base is still there, but there's a lot of interest and a lot of opportunity in that space. So if you go to page 4, and look at Michigan breweries, right? Michigan is participating heavily in this industry. And if you look, there's $2.2 billion worth of craft beer industry in Michigan in 2021. 407 approved craft breweries. These are individuals who manufacture and or sell craft brew. So a lot of this is beer pub, okay? And when you look at the diagram on the left, you see all the red dots. Where are they? They're in the west, the north, and the center. You come down to the southeast, there's not a whole lot of dots down there, right? Why is that? Right? You have one dot, which is Warwater in Marine City, right? More recently, in the last couple of years, you have Arctic Circle in Chesterfield, and there's not a whole lot of manufacturers in the area. You go up and down the waterfront, there's dozens of locations from New Baltimore all the way up to St. Clair and further up all the way up into the Thumb that are waterfront retailers selling craft brews. So the notion is, why not try to participate in this space, right? Let's put Clay Township on the map. So we came up with this concept, and I've as a home hobby, I've done wine and beer for 15 years as a home hobby. So at the encouragement of others, and now that we're retired and thinking about what's the next thing, this is interesting. So we said, let's see what we can do in this space. So we came up with this concept we called it Noble Mud. And it's celebrating Michigan traditions for the outdoors. It's celebrating the dogs we love. It's celebrating all the kinds of activities that go with that. And it's catching on. We took our home-based, call it the R&D Center now, and came up with 10 formulas. And we were sharing samples up and down the waterfront with retailers and asking questions. What do you think about farm to table meets craft brew? What kind of beer do your clients like to drink? And so we shared some samples, and the feedback we got, to be honest, we were looking for a reason to not go forward. Like if there was negative response, we weren't going to move forward. But we got from a dozen different retailers over a month period, we got lots of good input on the possibilities for this brewed locally, consumed locally, local economy, all that sort of thing. And so on page 5 is some of the brews. We have lagers, we have ales, we have porters. We covered the gamut. And the one in the center is the one we plan to go live with. It's called, it's a grapefruit citrus ale. It's a Saison wheat ale for those that, and the motto, sit, stay, and sip. It's catching up. I mean, you get this sort of reaction from these retailers that, they're liking it. So we're kind of liking the whole marketing campaign that goes with it too. So then, coming back to the business side of it on page 6, the opportunity is Clay Township locally brewed craft beer served by the state of Michigan MLCC licensed establishments, right? So these are the retailers along the waterfront, okay? Our customers of the brewery would be restaurants, pubs, clubs, party stores, right? We wouldn't be selling retail. We're in a residential zone. We like, and our neighbors like, what we have on High Road, and our neighbors like our beer too. They're like, yeah, we like, and we've got some testimonies in here too we can share with you. They like it for several reasons. One, they like the innovation. They like the entrepreneurship that we're bringing in. They like the idea that, and they like craft beer. So if you think about history then, and this next slide may have been more relevant for the zoning board. We looked at, the brewery history. You got Bell's Brewery, New Holland, Warwater, and then us, Noble Mud. And if you look on the right, you see the graph of barrels per year. So Bell's Brewery doing 50,000 a year. Or, I'm sorry, New Holland doing 50,000 a year. Bell's is too big for the chart. They were like $500,000 a year. Didn't even put them on the chart. Warwater, I spent an hour with Forrest over there at the brewer in Marine City. And they're doing about 6,000 a year with the operation they have. It's like a 30, 40 barrel operation, right? And so, and they got plans to grow, and they're extending into Macomb County. And if you go and you see this purple seltzer, that's their thing this year that they're going with. They're moving in that direction. And so then there's us, Noble Mud, and we're clocking in at a goal of getting to 2,000. So at maximum capacity, we're a microbrewery. We call it a microbrewery. So we're not in this first phase. Where we're looking to do is just get started, demonstrate it, build it out, and then establish it. Use that data point to learn, is this something you go forward with? There's a lot of cool places around town. Like I like that bank along the waterfront in Algonac. Wouldn't it be cool to convert that? But we're not there yet. We can't do that yet. We gotta build a market and demonstrate the feasibility before we went after something like that. Another place I liked that it sold was that old building in Fairhaven, right across from Zeff's. That old brick building there. That would be an excellent place to put a brewery in. You could even do retail in that one. So anyways, moving on to slide 8. So the growth model is we're a startup operation. We engage Michigan licensed retailers, right, who have the retailer stripe. We would go for the manufacturing distribution stripe, and we would not sell. We don't, that's just not part of our plan. And we would establish a type 2 home occupation at our home front and distribute up to 2,000 barrels a year. Phase 2 would be a full-scale brewery where you go to high-volume production, you move into a commercial zone, and you target maybe getting to 4,000 or 6,000 and getting to the place like Warwater. And then if you move from there, you might even go interstate. But let's just start, let's not grow too fast. And then brew pub is a possibility, too. You get into a commercial zone, place along the waterfront. That's a possibility, too. Okay? So then moving on to slide 9, right, is the brewery plan. This is the actual nuts and bolts of. So on the left is I'm just showing you a typical brewery. It has the central piece of a brewery is they call it the brew house. It has a hot water tank, it has a mash tun, and it has a kettle. And I kind of equate making beer to making oatmeal. You have a hot water tank, you put your grains in what they call the mash tun. You add the hot water to the grains and you let it soak. Now, there's a lot of fancy things you do with temperature and, ingredients to do flavor and color and all that. But instead, at the end of the oatmeal, the mashing process, you recover the liquid, not the grains. The grains are spent. Okay, so those you process and recycle. And we could talk more about that. And then you move it over to a kettle and you boil it, and you add more flavors and more ingredients. And then you have the foundation for beer, which then you move over to a fermenter. You add yeast. And the yeast eats the sugars. Its byproduct is alcohol, right? And the yeast dies and it falls out, and now you have beer. That's it. So it's in this case, and on the right, I'm giving you the actual. We've been working on this for 3 months now. We actually closed last week with our equipment guy and the engineering team. On the right is our layout. So you have K is kettle, M is mash tun, hot and cold water tanks, and then 3 fermenters and 2 bright tanks. Bright tanks are just a type of a fermenter. Okay, so you have 5 fermenters. And the top 4 are your brew house. And then if you say your actual brew house is 12 by 24, and then you say another 12 by 24 for bottling, water treatment, inventory, like your ingredients, right? That's your whole footprint for the brewery. That's it, 576 feet. Okay? So, questions? Moving right along. So then on slide 10. Just giving you a view of the lot, right? So Steve had mentioned, we have 12 acres, and he's right, at 6123, but we also own the lot next door. And so we have a total of 22, right? And so when we took this, we were, going back to the zoning committee, that we had canvassed each of our neighbors, and they actually went and talked to each of our neighbors, and they were all fully supportive and all that. But this just gives you a view of the privacy, and it's a secluded location, right? And in the upper left is the picture of the house that we built, and off in the lower left corner on the upper picture is the pole barn where we would locate the brewery. Then standing in the lower left picture is standing at the house, looking across the driveway, and you see the pole barn. The picture I showed you on the previous page fits in the center section of the pole barn. So the right section is personal storage, right? The center section is where we put the brew house, okay? So that's just a little bit of context of what we have. We have over 7,500 square feet of paved surface out there, so lots of access, egress, going in and out, that sort of thing, okay? The next slide 11, this is the federal TTB that wants to see this. So we put this together. for them, but I think it also helps with our type 2 planning considerations. So this is just a top view of the barn. And so in the center, you see the diagram of the brewery, right? Behind it, on the outdoors and outdoor covered storage, we have a chiller, and then off to the right, we have cold storage. So the cold storage will house finished product, okay? So you hook up your chiller to an air coil, and you run your chiller and keep your beer cool while it's fermenting, and there's temperature ranges you want to hit and do all that. So that's the operation that we would set up. The federal TTB wants us to put in a half wall on the right side because they want to have very clear line of delineation between the brewery area and personal area. And one of the things from the previous or even from the planning side is we don't want to have clutter on the driveway. So now we have 2 spaces where we can put, vehicle, a tractor, whatever we put in there. So it keeps the aesthetic really nice. In the bottom then is kind of a summary of the features, and this is what I would call the highlights from the planning. In the next few pages, we actually get into the details bullet by bullet for the 2 sections that Steve highlighted, sections 326 and 2026. So we can address that item by item and go through those. Okay? Questions? Good? All right. So I think this is the rubber hits the road here. This is... let me just go through bullet by bullet. So no outdoor storage, check that one, no outdoor storage. We're inside, we're brewing inside, and our finished product is inside a cold storage chamber. When we're brewing, people won't even know it. You won't see it, you won't hear it, there won't be any flashing lights. When beer ferments, it's yeast, and yeast is bread, so it kind of almost has a baking bread kind of smell. Okay, full-time residents of the premises. Part of what we're doing here is we're actually putting more capital into the process, so we have more automation because of so it'll allow us to ramp up our volume and not have your typical brewery might have 2 or 3 employees in the brew house, right? We're going to do this with a 1-person operation and the people at the house. So we've added a little capital investment to semi-automate the operation, so it keeps only full-time residents working the brewery. We get to the point where we're ready to hire somebody to come in. That's the point in time we look at moving into a commercial zone and going from where we're at to doubling or tripling the size. Okay, no structural modifications. Check that we have no structural changes to the home, to the location. It is, and Gary's been very involved with us the last 5 years as we built the place, and so it is the same barn that we built, and finished 2 years ago. Okay. So I do mention that because you have a kettle, it's like having a water heater or a boiler. You have to run a steam pipe through the roof, right? So you have on the back side there'll be a steam pipe coming out the top for a typical 8-inch pipe, which is a residential sized exhaust for a typical, like if you have a space heater, a gas-powered space heater, and you have to run a pipe out, right? Those kinds of things. It'll be the same size as the one we put for the big necks. Yeah. Okay. No equipment, materials, or processes which are incompatible. All equipment, material, and process will be solely compatible with residential and the Type 2 home occupation purposes. We're not going to have any other operations running. We're not going to be doing any vehicle repairs. We're not going to be. This is just. We're going to be making craft brew. And we'll self-distribute. And that's the Michigan standard for the licensing. You self-distribute. If you get beyond 2,000 barrels, you have to engage a distributor to move your product. So by the time we get to that point, we'll be out of there. Okay. So let's see. Item E, no use or activity associated will create any noise, dust, fumes, odors. So like I said, you won't know when we're brewing. You could drive by. In that photo you saw with the garage with the doors shut, you drive by on the road, if you can see the garage from the road, because we're 460 feet from the road, you won't know because the garage is shut, you won't see, smell, hear, there'll be no flashing lights, nothing. So it's very quiet and non-disruptive to the neighborhood aesthetic. Okay. What else? Full conformance with all local, state, and federal. Right, so we're working towards that. We worked with zoning, we're coming to the Planning Commission. In fact, last week, the federal TTB, we applied 3 months ago. They picked up our case, and we had a good discussion with them, and we're working through those details. And part of the discussion, what they're worried about is 2 things. One, physical separation of the spaces, which is the half wall. The second thing, they want to know excise tax and revenue. They want to know the revenue is protected, and they can come in at any time, unannounced, and do an informal audit or an unannounced audit. And they're going to be looking for two things. One, they might want to take a sample and run a test, because they're the assurance side of, are you producing product that is safe? They want to make sure that there's no bacterial contamination, those kinds of things. And so you go through all kinds of procedures to ensure a sanitary environment. The other thing they want to know is, where are you keeping your finished product? And how is the structure organized so that excise tax is assured? And so our answer on that one is really easy. It says if it's not in the tank fermenting, it's in the cold storage, and it'll be labeled and ready as ready for tax. So we gave them that, and they're pleased. They're happy. So they gave us a list of things and we're going to be submitting that in the next couple of days, and I anticipate getting approval for that as soon as, well, they want to come out and do a tour of the implemented operation. Once they do that in a couple months, we'll have that. Then we start, our next and final step, I think, is the state of Michigan, unless there's other things that we need to do. But at this point, it's state of Michigan for a manufacturing distributor's license. Okay? Okay, signs for type 1, type 2 will meet or exceed. But we're not advertising, because we don't want people coming up, and we're not, we're not a retail location, so we don't want or intend to have people coming up, stopping and, having a drink. It's just not, it's not the model. It's a manufacturing location, okay? Item 1 in 2026 is what Steve mentioned, is the zoning board approved the location in the pole barn versus in the attached garage. So that's item 1. Item 2, shall not involve product services which result in traffic patterns inconsistent. Our delivery is personal truck not to exceed 1 ton. So you take your 3/4 ton pickup, or you pick up a 1 ton van and you refrigerate the back. And so it's me and the boy running around doing deliveries. That's the plan there. So deliveries will be typical, Amazon, UPS, those kinds of things. You bring grains in, so you bring it on a pallet, that sort of thing. So it's not as though you have 18-wheelers coming up and down the road. This is a very small operation. Okay. Sale and distribution of merchandise. No, we don't do any retail sales on site. We won't be selling any merchandise on site. Occasionally, I can anticipate a client might say, if they're thinking about engaging us and bringing our product in, they might want to come in and do a tour. And we say, yeah, come on, see the place. So we bring them in, they do a tour, and they decide whether or not they want to engage with us and do business. And so you have to be willing to, if we go see, in fact, one of the guys we spoke to was Billy at Club Capri, and he liked our red ale, and he said if we got it done, he says, he'll dedicate a tap to it. And I told him, okay, that's enough for me to want to move forward and commit the capital. So he may want to come by someday and do a tour just to see the operation. Okay. And it will be licensed by the state of Michigan up to 2,000 barrels per year, consistent with Michigan regulations. Sales parties, no sales parties at the house. It's not our model. Our model is manufacture and distribute. If we have a gathering, it'll be a social gathering, like anybody. You have a party at your house, right? So, but no social gatherings where there's sales of product, right? 6 parking spaces are available, although we don't need them. We just need to get a truck in there to back up, pick up some product, and do some deliveries. Okay. Repair of vehicles, no, we're not doing, this is not a services business, so we have no services planned. Nothing we're going to do there. And I covered the owner's vehicle, okay? And we're not going to, it's not as though we have, I think this one also gets into, do you have a lot of extra equipment that you need to somehow store on site? And the answer is no. You've got your brewery, you've got your pallet of grains, you've got a pallet of bottles if you're going to bottle, or kegs, right? And they just sit there in the inventory or the staging area, right? And then you bottle it, put it in the warehouse or in the cold storage, and then you back up the truck and you take it out. So there's no other equipment needed in the process. So it's not like there's an intensive level of capital equipment. So let me pause there and see if there's any questions. That covers my comments on the 2 sections that Steve highlighted.
I have no questions at the moment.
Okay.
I got a couple questions.
Yeah.
The ordinance says only full-time residents can work, on the brewery and that. How many people live in your house?
3,
3? Okay,
my wife and our son,
okay.
myself.
And it's you and your son doing the delivery. How many deliveries do you anticipate a week with trucks coming in?
No more than 10. We'll bring it, with the operation we're currently setting up, our limit is 2,000 barrels a year. But right now, our demand is currently 0. We're still building and enabling. So after we do this, we start building the market. If you can get to 300 barrels a year in your first year, I think you're doing pretty good, right? And so the process that we're developing, you could actually run a batch a day. Even if you went with larger tanks, you could run up to 2 batches a day, right? And if you ran 2 batches a day, 5 days a week, you couldn't even get to 2,000, right? So that's just in terms of deliveries. Then every cycle, ales is every 2 weeks, lagers are 2 weeks plus 4, so it's 6 weeks. So if you run through the math, you can do maximum. I've been through this, 19 batches a month, right? So you're delivering 19 times a month, if you will.
Okay. Raw materials coming in?
I'm sorry, I said a month. I meant per quarter, 19 a quarter.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Anyone else at this point?
I think so.
Go ahead.
All right, cool. Slides 18, 19, and 20, we did a petition of neighbors and local retailers and asked for their opinion. And these are all folks that have signed, and we had nobody refused us, but we, the undersigned, are concerned citizens who urge our leaders of the city to approve this request to establish the brewery. This was for the zoning, so it was for zoning, but they were all for this idea of establishing a brewery. And the one question is, Mrs. Warden next door, I think it's okay to say because I think it's legal, but her son likes to shoot, and she's like, "Well, if you're going to have a bunch of people out there, you got to be careful." I said, "No, we're not bringing in residents and whatnot. We're in the garage brewing, and that's all we're doing. We don't have people coming in and all that." But he likes to target shoot, so that was her concern. We took care of that one, so she signed. Let me cover one other point. There's one question that did come up, and it was related to waste management. So, an issue has been with, especially large breweries that do like 1 million barrels a year, is how they're processing waste. And when they're processing 1 million, if they're doing 1 million barrels, that's 1 million or 2 million barrels of wastewater going back into the sewage system. Those kind of numbers and that kind of math can alter the design of a sewage plant. So these are breweries that are dumping in the drain, and it's going through the system back to the treatment plant. And that kind of volume and load can affect the design point of the plant, right? So the move has been in recent years towards recycling. So why discard spent grains when you can sell them to a farmer? The waste product from brewing is a food-grade product. It's grains. Nowadays they take grains, dry them, ground them, and make bread. They take them and put them in compost piles. The dead yeast there's protein in yeast, and you can take that and till it in with the compost pile. So, or you take it and just mix it in with the grains, and the farmers love it. We got one of the farmer on Chartier, cattle farmers, already said, "Yeah, I'm interested in whatever you got." So, I wanted to give some context on that because that's a good question, and it's come up. The other is cleaning and sanitation, and so 5 Star Brands makes 2 products that are the number 1 products in the craft brew industry, and it's environmentally safe cleaning. Okay, so it's PBW is one, and Star San is another, and it's a cleaner and a disinfectant, but they're safe, and you rinse them down the drain. So whether putting it into into groundwater, into your septic field. Right. Now, the one thing is once every year or two, and I'll do this as soon as the equipment comes in, because some of the equipment is used and some of it's brand new welded stainless. We'll run an acid clean. You do that once every 2 years on average, and it does an acid etch of the entire operation, cleans off any and all residue, and then you let it dry. You might use 20 gallons of that in a solution. That's what you want to collect and take up to Smithfield and put in the chemical waste. So, that's our strategy for waste management. Just wanted to share that because I think that's a valid question. That's a good question. And I've got a couple handouts here. I can leave them if you like and include with the file. This is from the Pro Brewers Association. They're a national association that provides thought leadership to the craft brew industry. So this is some of the recent publications. So with that, I think I'll take a break
That was a
and
very
see what other
thorough
comments or questions there might
presentation.
be. Let's see. I think I
I'm
covered it
impressed
all.
for sure. Do any other members of the?
My bio is in the back. I didn't go through that, but if you see my bio and you can go to LinkedIn and see
And that
a
was
little bit
included
about
in
my
our
history.
packet that we
Yep.
received, so hopefully everybody had a chance to review all of that, but you did a very nice presentation, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Anybody have any questions at the moment?
No. Does the batches to barrels directly, so you were saying 19 batches per quarter, so that'd be approximately 6 batches a month. Does that correlate directly to 6 barrels, or,
Each batch is 4 barrels.
okay.
4 barrels is 120 gallons,
Oh.
roughly, depending on the yield.
So the 160 square feet, is that adequate storage for the cold storage for what you're gonna need on site, or?
The storage was designed to hold 20 batches of finished product based on kegging in 6 to 5 gallon kegs, with a little extra storage for bottling. Bottling is, there's no margin in bottling, it's more about branding, right? So some retailers want to put your bottles on the shelf, so you make some nice labels, you get a graphic artist, you put it up there, and you hope it helps to drive the brand and the recognition, and then they go into pubs and they ask for it on tap, because that's where you can realize your payback. But I'm not sure I answered your question.
I just, because, 160 square feet isn't that much, so, one of my concerns would be not having to come back and say, hey, we need more cold storage, or we need to change the structure now. My other concern would be is, as you pointed out, essentially every house has a bomb, the hot water tank. If something goes wrong, what type of safety measures are there for your boiler? And you said that you own the lot next to it, so that kind of alleviates some, but is the barn an adequate distance away for any emergencies or anything of that sort from the property line?
Yes, so the boiler is like an oven. It has a combustion chamber with a direct fire gas, and the fluid sits on top. So it's a kettle, like a kettle that you would have in a boiler for a heater. Yeah,
Are there
it's 250,000 BTU.
Are there safety measures on the boiler to prevent overpressurization?
It's not a sealed unit.
Not a sealed unit.
Right, it's not a pressurized chamber. It's a domed chamber with a steam pipe that goes out the top. So the steam boils out, and so it's unpressurized. You worry more about burning your wort and ruining a batch than which could be a costly problem. On your point about the cold storage, we could store 20 batches in there. So a 6, we'll have 2 deep, 2 high.
So essentially you could
2 sides with an aisle in the middle. So the way we designed it was 20 batches. And that's a full 3 months. And if you're not moving product,
if you're not moving it that quickly,
you don't want to be making any more. You want to switch to marketing from production at that point. You might do some seasonal stuff, and make a batch of a porter, a seasonal porter, or a holiday this or that. You want to get your high volume, establish what your high volumes are. It's probably going to be like a grapefruit and a red ale, maybe a brown ale. Those are the ones that move. Might even come out with a juicy, right? It's going to take the grapefruit and go a little bit sweeter. Those are the ones that are going to move, especially in the summer. You get towards the seasonal, and holidays, folks start thinking about a porter. So you do one batch of porter. And the nice thing about porter is it's like wine. You can let that sit for 6 months, and it ages like wine. So if you do a batch of porter, you throw it in there, and you'll sell them slowly. And you hope that your volume, you'll have a couple of volumes that you're pushing through. So you keg it, you put it in there, and 2 days later you're pulling it out and delivering it.
Right.
That's what you hope for. If you get beyond 20, we're going to stop production and go do marketing. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it.
Any other questions at the moment? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing, so I'm going to ask anybody in the public who wants to come forward and make any comments in regards to this public hearing. Ask one more time. See no one coming to the podium, so I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:42. I would note in our packet, or what we received from the building department, we have our checklist review list from the different departments, water, sewer, police, so I hope everybody reviewed that. There are some comments in certain aspects, but it all seems to be in order at this particular point, so. Any discussion?
I'd like to say, I had the opportunity to stop by the property and just walk around, check it out, and Jerry was more than willing to show me the inside and where it was going to, the brewery was going to take place. And I'll be honest, I was very impressed by the setup that he had out there, but also, I guess maybe, I don't want to say unimpressed because that sounds condescending, but just the footprint it's really a small footprint for what he's looking at doing. I mean, it's not even half the size of this room, I don't think, the footprint that he was talking about the brewery being in. So I think it's very unassuming. It's not like it's going to be a weird-looking factory in the middle of a residential zone. And nobody's even going to know what's happening, honestly. It's pretty well laid out, I think. I think he did a great job. The presentation, I mean, if you don't mind, whenever anybody has something like this come to us, if you want to help them with their presentations, I think it'd be phenomenal. I think this was unbelievably thorough, which is great. I think it's wonderful. It answers all our questions before we get to ask them. So that's kind of nice. But I think it was a great presentation. I think the business is going to be. I think it'd be a wonderful addition to Clay Township. Just something maybe, hopefully, it blows up and you put us on the map for a great craft brewery in the township. So, I think well done. I think it was well done. Great.
I got more time on my hands.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. Thank you very much for the comprehensive presentation. It's well put together. And as Chris said, answered all the questions before we even had them. Had a few that Robert had, but other than that, thank you.
Did you bring any samples?
I can make that.
Know the audience.
Thank you for asking.
I'll probably be back, well, we've talked at several places, and I'll probably be back doing some more samples. Now, Billy at Club Capri, he asks you a question. He says, is this for sale or is this social? You tell him this is social, it's not for sale. He opens at the bar and he pours it, he tastes it. So come on down to Club Capri, we'll be doing some samples.
It'll be social.
He's giving me some really good input on which one's the target.
Perfect.
Anybody else? No? So do we have a motion? Any more discussion?
I'd make a motion to approve the special land use for 6123 High Road.
Second.
Any further discussion? Everyone understand the motion? Sue, you on board? All right, roll call, please.
Okay. Deborah Eddy,
Yes, of course.
Mark Burchard,
Yes.
Christopher Daggy,
Yes.
Crystal Tunin,
Yes.
Christine Holcomb,
Yes.
Tom Kozel is absent, and Robert Muesling, yes. Wayne Torno,
Yes.
and Kathy Schweikart.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
Before you leave, though, we have some paperwork we need to stamp and have some signatures on. That way you'll have yours ready to go, and the township will have their copy, okay?
Thank you.
So if you wait just a moment, we'll get it
Does
to
it
you.
matter? Front page, I guess.
And I need you to come forward and put your signature on these two also, please. We need you to sign,
I was
please.
trying to send it to somebody. I was looking if you closed it and opened it. 'Cause it looks like he's trying to send it.
For the
You know what I'm
applicant.
saying? Like when you send the text.
Go, one more.
Reopen it.
Same spot.
Nope. You know what? Cindy's.
So I'm gonna give that one back to you,
Cindy's that one. Try to open Cindy.
and you get to keep this one for your records. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good luck.
But the phone number
Look,
on
Jerry.
Cindy's that one, you know what I'm saying? Because it might be how she sent it.
We're going to his house. Moving on to item number 7, unfinished business, which I don't think at the moment we have any of that, so, yes. Unless you want to watch the rest of our exciting meeting. You're more than welcome to stay. Okay, item number 8 is planning consultant report. Steve?
As of today, we have no items for the next agenda, so next month's agenda, there's nothing that has come in.
Seriously?
We'll monitor and see.
So does that mean we've been really efficient?
That's what it means. Yes. Or people on vacation.
We'll go with the first answer.
Yeah.
How's that? Item number 9 is ZBA representative's report, which would be Christopher Daggy.
All right, house at 6502 Marina, they came in requesting a variance. Garage house that wasn't conforming, and they wanted to put an addition to basically connect the two and make it a little more uniform. That was approved, made sense. It was, non-conforming to start with, and I think it's a better design now what we approved. 452 Russell was a vacant parcel that had a accessory structure, and just decided to table that for additional review through the building department. Gary, they're trying to work something out with being able to potentially call it a prior to construction, because they plan to put a house up on it, and to see if they can work it out to have to somehow keep it without having to get a variance on it. 83660 Anchor Bay Drive. It was a request for a rear yard waterfront setback. They were requesting quite a large setback. They have an existing house on the property, and then angling between the houses and trying to decide which houses to take. We did grant a variance to go back to where the existing building line, the rear building line, is on the existing house. So they did get a variance, but nowhere near what they were looking for. And that was basically it.
Well, thank you for the report.
My pleasure.
Gary, do you have anything to add other than what he just said? No, okay, thank you. Nothing to add. So I'll move on to item number 10, which is board representatives report, which was Mark.
I don't have a report, only one thing on the contact information to have. My email address is wrong. I sent you an email concerning the appropriate email, so that's it.
Okay.
One complaint.
Did Algonac Sand and Gravel, did that get passed through, or what happened there?
It was held in ambient.
In ambulance, is that a legal term?
Looking for further review on it.
Further review, all right. So nothing done on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mark. Item number 11 is chairperson's report. I believe we're all in receipt of the do's and don'ts, maybe class for tomorrow. Did everybody get that from, I think I got one from Cindy Valentine and also from Marty Bryson. So if you're interested, yeah, I believe it's tomorrow from whatever.
12 to 1.
Thank you.
Can that be recorded and listened to? Does it have to be on this? I'll look into it tomorrow.
I don't know the answer to
I have to work at that time.
Okay.
What is it?
The do's and don'ts,
Oh, okay.
you know what I'm referring to? Okay. So we have that. Other than that, I don't have anything further to add at this particular point. How about number 12, planning member, commission member comments?
I have a couple, if I could.
You bet.
Kind of touch on what Chris Daggy was just asking about, the Algonac Sand and Gravel situation. At our last meeting, we had a motion for a recommendation to Township Board. We spent, I don't know, I feel like we spent 2 hours deliberating
We did.
on that situation. And then the township board had a meeting the next day, and at that meeting, they did not have a recommendation from planning commission on that. So is there a procedure, or is there something we can do to get a formal recommendation or a formal, something to the township board, that they get a formal recommendation from planning commission? Because it just seems like the township board started to deliberate about the same exact thing we did the night before without the information that we had given, we had a recommendation that we put together for them, but they had no record of it.
Unless they sat down and watched our meeting.
Yeah, because it was very quickly done. But even by their next board meeting, which was
Yeah, last Monday.
Monday, they still had no formal recommendation from planning commission as to what they were doing. So to touch on what Mark's saying, they ended up, I don't want to say even tabling it, because it went to a vote a few times, and it was just split because I guess they were, one, waiting for our minutes to be approved so that was our formal recommendation. But I just feel like that's bogging down the process, for the applicant, and even seems like for us, we put all the effort into it to come to, I feel like, a conclusion or maybe a recommendation, and then it's just sort of, I don't want to say ignored, but not even considered during their deliberations. So I don't know if there's a way to get, is that asking too much, or is that?
Because I know at the particular meeting, I think a few of us were in attendance at the Board of Trustees meeting, and again, they didn't have our written motion because we hadn't approved our minutes.
I suspect, only speculating, but I suspect it was because the meeting was so fast. I don't know the process, the administrative process of getting the meeting minutes to the clerk and getting them to the township board. I can't really respond on that. I'm not involved.
So they have a copy of our minutes, but technically, I think there was a technicality in it that they were saying that because our minutes were not approved
That's right,
by
yes.
us till now, that recommendation didn't stand. But if we have a recommendation and we make a formal recommendation, and I don't know if there's a document or something that can be presented to the board the next day or something, so that process can continue, because essentially it feels like we're stalling the applicant. So
Regardless if the minutes were approved or not, I don't think you had a recommendation that should have been considered.
I agree. That's why
This paper right here,
That paper right there goes.
I fill out, should be able to go right to them. And if we motion to recommend approval, then that should be written on here, and that could go, the next day, literally could be picked up out of the envelope and handed to them.
Steve, with your report to the board, the township supervisor, can you stress this fact about as far as the moving forward with that review, please?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I think the problem, though, is because it's done in a motion and it's in our minutes, that until we approve the minutes, it's not really an adopted recommendation by us.
I'm not sure about that.
No?
We have that.
Because it's voted on.
It's voted
on
on.
it.
because I feel like that we voted on that. When we approve our minutes, we're approving what the minutes
Right,
say.
right.
But the recommendation, maybe if it was a separate document, that this is a formal recommendation from the planning commission, that could just be presented to the board.
Let me ask you this, Robert. When you fill out, and I don't have the one for organic sand and supply in front of me, because there were certain, because we went over that very clearly, what the motion was.
Yeah.
Did you handwrite all that out on one of those pieces
Yes.
of paper? So,
When we make a motion, for the most part, it might not all be completely legible, or the most legible anyways, but I put the motion on here
Right.
and go through roll call, and,
that's what I believe you did.
even if we have to go a step further than that, we can have a paper set up to where each one of us signs it. And that could be part of the approval process. It'd be a pain, but
I just think a formal recommendation needs to be presented to the township board before they start to
before
engage in the
before it's on
topic.
their agenda.
Yeah.
We at least need to know what the motion was that was approved and by whom.
Yeah.
So you work with how many other communities? Any suggestions if that's a viable solution to?
I think it is. Most communities just rely on the minutes and read the draft minutes at the board level. to make sure.
Okay,
But, I mean, we can do it any way the board.
because if you look at our draft minutes right here, it's pretty clear the motion.
Right.
Yeah,
Shouldn't have, I mean, Mr. Gura tonight.
Yes.
Was approved
Yes.
under your recommendation. He does not have to wait a month until
That's
you
true.
approve the bill
No,
that's
minutes
true.
to start his operation. He's
Right.
approved tonight, so.
Right.
So
I
I,
don't see how that
No.
the validation of the minutes, or approval of the minutes.
Right.
Starts the approval process.
so let me ask you this, when we get done with this meeting tonight or any meeting, how soon are the draft, is the draft available of the minutes from,
I usually have them by the beginning of the following week, so they'll get them by like Monday.
which would be probably in time for the board?
Business days.
Yeah. So versus creating more work and doing a special document,
Right.
can we somehow relay this information to the Board of Trustees that any of the motions, recommendations we make, they can use the draft copy, correct? So as we look in our minutes that we have that we just approved, it was correct.
So let me get this straight. When are those minutes going to be available in a draft form?
She just said.
I usually have them the beginning of the following week, depending on my schedule.
Okay, so next Monday or something like that,
Usually it's-
okay.
it's-
So I went down this road before with Cindy, all right,
Which Cindy?
Babbitt's.
Okay.
So you turn the minutes over to Cindy?
I've been directed to send them to the building department, and
Right.
that's where my,
Okay,
That's where it
and,
ends.
That's where it
and,
ends.
and that's where it stops. So I'd like to make some kind of a recommendation that is moved forward from the building department to the planning commission, so we can review them prior to the meeting.
And that's where I think we're getting bogged down, because I've been told in the past from the department that they're not allowed to release our draft minutes until we approve it. Legally, I don't know if that's correct or not. That's probably an attorney's question, but you communicate with Christine a lot, right? Is that something you'd be able to ask her, since you're here present at this meeting?
I'm sorry, what was that?
She gets the minutes done of whatever meeting, which includes a motion, on Monday. It goes to Cindy Babish in the building department. In the past, we've been told they're not going to release any of the draft minutes because they've not been formally approved until a month later, basically.
Which is
So-
ridiculous.
Which I would assume that as long as it was noted that they're draft, then they can be released.
Yeah, according to the Open Meetings
That's-
Act, you have to post those draft meeting minutes on your website within, I think it's 8 days. So they're already out there as a public document.
Not here.
I don't know if that happens here, but that may be true, but I don't know if that's been
Well, if
happening
it-
here, so.
It
we might-
happens on Haida, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So,
On ZBA, they will, every motion, they write it down, who voted.
like this.
And then
Yeah.
then it's signed by each person. So it's all on one piece of
They sign.
paper.
It is signed.
So the whole thing is, whether it passed, didn't pass, everyone signed.
Sure.
So
I
that
see
would,
that.
that would
But
give
it's the
one
same
sheet.
process.
Same process, but
It's
that would give
exactly
one
because-
document.
So
I
maybe
used
we
to
could-
ask for a copy of the draft so I could report to you guys, and I, because I'd use it with my own notes, when I was a representative, and it is a little, like, if you don't keep good notes, it's like, well, what if, so-
And that's exactly what I was looking for, so I can have those minutes for the board meetings.
yes.
So could we possibly get Cindy to modify our sheets for voting?
for voting.
To include space for signature
Do you have a
and
blank
date
one?
and
Trying to be more efficient with it.
Absolutely.
yeah, and I know theirs has like space
They
for.
have one in here. Didn't we have one
I couldn't
attached?
find mine. I know it. I know they had it attached because I when Chris mentioned that, I remembered seeing that in our packet.
Is there some kind
Yeah,
of
it's in there.
formal request that we should put forward to the building department about those minutes? And getting them in a timely manner?
I can talk to, I believe it's Cindy Valentine, who oversees, like, Cindy Babish and Amber, am I correct? I can speak with Cindy Valentine, express our discussion that we're having here, I'm just looking for what the ZBA did, because I know it's in this packet somewhere.
I think you just passed it.
Did I?
Yeah. One more page. Is that it?
No, that's
That's the
neighbors.
petition.
Never mind.
I didn't print everything out, there were so many pages.
That's another concern too. I know I've seen it. I can go back and find it and basically say, hey, this is what the ZBA is doing to streamline and make it more efficient for the Board of Trustees. When we vote on something, can we do, here it is,
Yep.
Yep,
this.
that's what they do.
Is that something we're thinking might be beneficial to make this move faster?
Yeah, sit down, everybody take a look. I think that would be great.
Take this
Okay.
form and modify it
Skip one sec.
to that?
Yep.
You wouldn't necessarily need the full minutes, that gives you what we approved or didn't approve.
But you could go a step further and ask them to put the draft in
So
the
you
Board
can
of
relate
Trustees
to both of them.
packets
Yeah,
for
both
their
of them would be
meeting.
nice, yes.
When one of our topics is on their agenda, like.
Yeah, that's important too. I mean, you can have this,
Yeah.
but if it doesn't make their agenda or their
Correct.
packet, then it's just
gotta
as
make
useful as the one we
packet.
have. Yeah.
Well, if you get it to me, that way I can report out on it at the board.
Oh, there you go.
So-
Yeah.
But it should be in their it should be in your board packet.
After.
In case for some reason you're not there.
It should be.
Plus, they can review it ahead of time because
Yes.
there are,
Yeah. I've been fighting that battle for a long time, believe me. Going nowhere.
Well, once-
When we get our board packet from the minutes of the board, okay, they're just basically very brief, okay? Doesn't tell you what I said or what anybody else said, approved by me or what, that was it, We don't get into detail.
Right.
And I don't think we need to do that if we have a time constraint with you, we can have a brief summary to begin with, but that's just a suggestion.
Okay, so I'm going to take this form that we normally use and this one, talk to whoever I need to talk to, the powers to be. Steve, you've seen both these forms before, haven't you? Do you have any input? We see.
I haven't seen those, but I can look at them.
Would you mind? I can scan them and send them to you, or however we're going to do this.
If you do that, it'd be great.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
And then we can have a discussion to see how we can streamline this process so that, in particular, Board of Trustees understands what we did before the next meeting. How's that? Does that work for you?
yeah, I like that.
Everybody else?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's a good way to stop misinformation from happening.
Agreed.
And it also helps, probably from Mark's point of view, that if he's not there for whatever reason, the board doesn't say, I don't know what happened. So they know, they have it in their packet, and it should be included in their packet, so. All right, any other board planning members' comments?
So one more thing, I hate to
Okay,
keep
Chris, go
stonewalling
for it.
people, but, so there's I don't know if there's something that can be done with this either, but this has happened on more than one occasion, and just recently, the Planning Commission had agreed to rezone or recommended rezoning property from C2 to C3 for a business so that they can do some different things. The one I'm referencing is going to be the boat rental place that he wanted to rezone from C2 to C3. I know during the meeting, we made it abundantly clear that he would need to come back to Planning Commission with a site plan so that everybody knew what he was doing in his business, what it was going to be so that it could be approved, the neighbors could have the public hearing on it, and everything could go through process. He opened up a boat rental business and was renting boats, and I'm not sure if it was your department, Gary, or who, but you guys
I'll tell you on that.
quickly stopped it.
Oh, wait, I'm going to stop you for a second, because I get yelled at if you don't come to the podium. Sorry.
As soon as we were made aware of that, it got shut down. And even though we sent out probably some notices that weren't entirely legal, we did a cease and desist to stop it, and it stopped almost immediately. If you go by that, just days after we knew about it, they pulled up, they took their signs, and they went down the street. Without a doubt, he was very clear on what was approved, and our minutes and our films supported that. We actually had a meeting set up with him this week. I think it was going to be today. And he backed out of it. So he knew it. Of course, they try to throw the blame on us that,
Sure.
we didn't know. but we shut that down as quickly as we saw it happening. So we didn't drag our feet on that. He knew he needed to come before. But my understanding was this Freedom Boat Club, which is who was kind of speaking about this rezoning, ended up, they still have a spot in Harbor Club, I guess. And they sent this to a different company, entirely different company, different people, and said, yeah, you can work out of here without authorization.
Okay.
And I don't think we could have done it quicker.
No.
To shut them down.
Like I said, I commend whoever it was that was in charge of making that happen. I just didn't know if there was something on the front end when we do rezone it that we can prevent that. I mean, you're never going to be able to prevent everything, but I don't know if it's conditionally rezoned on bringing a site plan. I mean, is that possible so that we can't just give them carte blanche when we rezone it? And then they think that, although we make it abundantly clear that they can't, they still do it. So I don't know if there's something that, they come for rezoning, but when you come for rezoning, you have to bring a site plan at that point. I know that.
I think generally, like you said, abundantly clear. That was made abundantly clear that night by multiple members.
Yep.
And he was well aware of it. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. I think this is not the usual.
Okay.
I think the majority of people, when they get to zoning, we see them quickly to say, okay, let's figure out what we can do, and then it comes back to you if they decide to develop.
Yeah, again, like I said, I'm not complaining that somebody took their time, but because I think it was handled quickly. I just didn't know if there was something that we could do on the front end so that you didn't have to spend those hours and effort to shut him down. So you're never going to stop everything. I understand that.
That was just an odd one.
Yeah, but good job. I mean, like I said,
don't think
it stopped.
At this point, I don't sense a problem, so I wouldn't say that.
No, the sign was even gone. I know as of today, I saw that they pulled the sign down too. So.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the only question I had. Sorry.
You don't have to apologize.
Slow down.
Any other board member comments or questions?
I'd like to say welcome to, can I call you Skip?
Yeah, call me Skip.
To Skip. Welcome to the Planning Commission.
Well, thank you.
I just want to say also thank you for everyone for holding the fort down in my absence. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Glad to have you back.
Thank you.
Definitely.
For sure.
You were
Yes.
missed.
Thank you.
And thank you, Skip, for throwing your name in to come join us on the Planning Commission. We appreciate it. Hopefully you'll stick it out with us.
Stick around.
And Chris here won't scare you off again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Try to get you out earlier.
And this Chris is helping out with the ZBA, so we'll see where we go from there. How's that sound, okay?
Perfect.
So any other board comments? Well, hearing none, I'm going to go to item number 13, public comments. Anybody in the public would like to come forward and make a comment? I see people shaking their heads no. Okay, I interpreted that correctly. So if that's the case, we go on to item number 14, which is an adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn. Was that Mark?
That was Mark. Mark heard that. All right, any discussion, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you, everyone, appreciate your help.